All right. Good morning. Another beautiful spring day here in Kansas. Hello. Amyak is first. Caesar, hello. Tom, good morrow. Hello, Slow Snail. In class, yes, welcome. Oh, I'm trying to see what is that a cat looking at? What is the cat looking at? In your PFP there. That's nice. T-Lag Pro, hello. ZJ. Yeah, where have you been? Okay, that's okay. Hello, Anster. Hey, Hudson. Sir Butts, good morning. Troca is here. Guys, you won't believe what I just got recommended when I logged on to YouTube. I got to show you this. It's freaking messed up. The very first video I am recommended, logged on as Mr. Beat, is I time traveled to the Titanic 1912 vlog. My family and I recently watched the movie Titanic, which is a very good movie. It was cool that my kids were asking a lot of questions about history too as we watched it. It's like, did this stuff really happen? Yes, it did. But yeah, so I guess that's why they recommended this. But look how many views it has: 876,000 views in 9 days. This is AI slop. I don't want to click on it. I really don't. I know it's bad. It's got to be bad. Yeah, see, we can just preview and see how bad it is. Oh gosh, 14 minutes long. They're trying to, I mean, I get what they're trying to do with this, but no, just don't do this. I used real historical illustrations in the Titanic. No, stop. So here's what I'm doing. Don't recommend channel. That's what I recommend you do as well. Screw this AI slop. Anyway, how you doing? No, it's getting out of hand. There's a lot of history tubers that are giving in to it as well. And we need to call each other out. They really do suck. Thank you for feeling what I'm feeling. Okay, I don't know if you're being sincere, but if you are being sincere, thank you for pushing back. I think the problem is with AI, using AI to teach history, is you are putting something out there that and presenting it as historical truth, and most people watching know that it's obviously artificial intelligence is being used to create it, but that's now. In the future, there's going to be a certain point where people are watching that same AI slop and they're not going to know if it's real or if it's AI slop. I'm not talking about in 10 years or even 100 years. I'm talking about think hundreds of years in the future. We need to think about these things when people are trying to research the Titanic. They're going to come across this, and perhaps there'll be a significant number of people who are misled to think that this is literally realistic footage of the Titanic. I know it's hard to imagine, but I'm already kind of iffy about paintings and stuff. I've always used paintings of figures in my videos, because the paintings don't always look how they really look like. But it rubs me the wrong way. Perhaps I'm overreacting. I don't know. Which former Vox guy are you talking about? I don't know. This could lead to a really good debate. Uses AI to write its videos in the description. This happens more often than we like to admit. Um, the fact is, there's a lot of generic educational content where people can use AI to write the scripts, and most won't even be able to tell the difference. Oh, Troca, come on, be more positive than that. Hello, Eddie. The main video I'm reacting today is from the channel Spectacles, by the way. Our friends, we've collaborated. They actually came to my studio and filmed with me. Philip is originally from Kansas City. Now he lives out in DC, but those guys make phenomenal videos, and we're going to react to their latest, which is really thought provoking. Yes, yes. Caffeinated Linux, yes. I mean, hardware pricing, but I think energy costs is the main concern for most of us. I don't think so, Sir Butts. I think we've always had a pretty high percentage of folks who struggle with critically thinking. Oh, George fell down. George, it's okay. Oh, he keeps falling down. All right. George Washington back there. The Palantir Manifesto, I have not seen that. I heard about it, though. No effects, of course. I love no effects. Can there be good intent when trying to teach history? Of course. I think a lot of teachers already use AI with good intent. They're trying to get kids interested, so they're doing whatever they can. You know, like I created music. I sang to my kids to try to get them into it. I made videos. I can see your view, and I've realized I never thought about how painting can change views of history. Yeah, I mean, I do go back and forth with this. Yeah, there's already a lot of misinformation. In fact, the movie has some inaccuracies in it as well, which honestly, they're not that big a deal compared to some of the other. Like, I refuse to watch Napoleon because of all the inaccuracies. I watched a video on YouTube going through some of them. I don't remember who made that, but I was like, I'm not watching this. I am not supporting this. Speaking, I feel like AI has fried some billionaire classes' brains and their ability to predict how humans react has steadily declined. I more and more am convinced that we need to, at some point, just let super artificial intelligence run things because they're going to do a much better job than we ever did. As long as we still have our human connection, we're able to live our happy lives. If we let a lot of artificial intelligence run things in the background, as long as we program it to obviously not destroy us, like in the Terminator movies, then I think it will be fine. As long as we still have our freedoms. Okay, so let's check out this video. The video is called The Ancient Invention That Solves Corruption. Spoiler alert, this is about random, what's it called? Random or lottery elections? Lottery elections, basically, where you have random people voted in to run the government. And the more I hear about this, the more I am on board. Philip actually texted me saying, "Hey, what do you think about this idea? Because we're making a video about this." And I was like, "Yeah, especially looking at what has happened in recent years with the rise of demagogues again." I was like, "Okay, yeah." It's weird because the older I get, the less confident I am in democracy. It doesn't mean I want autocracy or oligarchy. Of course, obviously, I'm against authoritarianism. I'm against any government overreach. But at the same time, a lot of times people are okay with that. They vote for that. There's so many people that don't realize it, but they are in fact fascists and they vote for authoritarian leaders. It's pretty It's just depressing sometimes. TLAG Pro, yes, the Romans did this. I think they get into that in this video. So let's go ahead and check it out. Yeah. These guys make such good videos.
This is an American ballot. With it, you're free to vote for anyone to represent you in politics, so long as they've raised millions of dollars and are running with one of two parties. But once in office, they can deliver on all their promises. Well, so long as they decide to keep them. This is American democracy, and it's strange comparing it to the original democracy from 2,500 years ago. This is an ancient Greek ballot from Athens. With it, you don't vote for anyone except yourself if you want to. There's no majority decision, just the random draw of a name. And Blade Peterson has been selected for a seat in Congress. Maybe that's you. This is a lottery, and it's democracy as originally intended. Politics without politicians. But why should
democracy as originally intended in ancient Athens, yes. But as you all probably already know, there are different schools of thought when it comes to this, and a lot of people disagree with what democracy should look like. Most people agree that democracy should not be purely direct democracy, except for in certain rare circumstances. So most of the world's governments have representative democracies, and most of them are parliamentary, which means you vote for representatives, but these representatives often also vote for other people to represent within their actual institution that they are in. So anyway, I shouldn't cut him off so soon. Let's go ahead, Philip.
Anyone take this seriously? I mean, letting random people run the country? Really?
Yes.
Except,
yes.
Why should anyone take this seriously?
Right.
In America, public approval of Congress hovers around 15%. Here and in Britain and France, 2/3 of citizens.
By the way, a new poll just came out that said that Congress has an approval of 10%. 10%. Most of the bad things in your life have a higher approval rating than Congress. I'm just saying.
Think their government corrupt. And it's not hard to tell why. Politicians openly engage in insider trading, take bribes they call campaign finance, consort with complete monsters, and after office, take jobs at big corporations they protected from regulation. And none of that should surprise us. Aristotle, an ancient Greek philosopher who lived in this political system, literally wrote the book on politics that gave us the terms like democracy, oligarchy, and monarchy. And in it, he wrote thousands of years ago, "It is accepted as democratic when public offices are allocated by lottery, and as oligarchic when they are filled by election." Elections produce an unaccountable, corrupt, and immoral political elite.
What a quote. What a quote is that? That is crazy. Aristotle, man. Somebody had a comment. Well, what are we watching? This is Spectacle's latest video. Okay, caffeinated. 10%, and sadly, most will be reelected. Okay. The thing is, why? We're the ones in charge, right? We still do get a vote. In the United States, we do. I just think it's completely, entirely healthy to tell everybody not to vote for any incumbent at this point. Just tell them, reelect no one. There's so much distrust of government in the United States in particular right now, and I think now is the time where we just kick them all out, even the ones you like. I'm not saying that to be hyperbolic or provocative. I'm saying literally we should change the culture. We don't have to just vote for whoever's already in there, even if it's our own party. That's why the primaries are so important. You got primaries starting up here in May in many states. You need to, if you're an American, check your local primary election coming up. You need to research all the candidates And that's where you have the most impact. I mean, we need some non-establishment outsiders just to take over the government right now. Um, what what else are we going to do? The status quo hasn't been working for decades. So I'm tired of this really cynical mentality, this doomer mentality. If somebody has been in there for a long time, regardless of party, I don't care if it's your tribe. I mean, most Americans identify as independent anyway, supposedly. Kick them out, for crying out loud. There's so many Democrats right now that have been in for decades, and I'm just like, okay, I agree with you on most policies, but why the heck are you still doing this, man? It's time to go. It's time to retire. Bye-bye. I'm just getting so sick of this mentality. We have the power to change this. Okay.
Action. Elections produce an unaccountable, corrupt, and immoral political elite because they are oligarchic by design. Because elections have 4 big problems: selection bias, cognitive bias, corruption, and most fatal of all, what James Madison called the mortal disease of government: polarization. Lotteries, on the other hand,
Washington.
They aren't just more democratic, they actually work better because they solve all those problems with 4 ancient principles: koinos, sophos, euthena, and henates. And I'm going to explain each of them. But you don't have to.
Good, because I have no idea what those mean. I just realized he's wearing a toga. That's awesome.
Take my word for it. After all, the city that used lotteries, that invented this system, Athens, was one of the richest and most powerful civilizations of its time and produced some of the greatest minds in history: Plato, Socrates, Diogenes, Euripides, Thucydides, the fathers of philosophy, science, drama, and history. Oh, and today, 2 major countries have recently begun using lotteries to reshape how they do politics, and it's actually working. So, I'm going to explain how this works, how the ancients used it, and why lottery is so effective. Along the way, I'll take the arguments against it seriously, and we'll hear from real participants in today's modern experiments who went in skeptical or downright angry.
I thought it was a scam.
At first, I thought I'll punch him through the window.
But who by the end
Brian,
were completely sold.
There is
Brian's of the channel Real Engineering. I've met him 2 or 3 times. He's a pretty interesting fella.
union of souls. You feel it.
This is the case for a return to lottery, a case for rebuilding politics without politicians.
I love it. The props are getting better and better.
To understand how and why lottery works, we need to take a look at how the Athenians used it. Their system, not unlike America's government today, was sort of organized around 3 core branches. The assembly was a legislature where laws were debated, drafted, and chosen, but instead of politicians, it was full of whichever citizens showed up that day, usually some 6,000 people. Now, participation was extremely limited by modern standards. No women, and Athens had a vast enslaved population, but Athenian citizenship extended to all free adult males, making Athens actually more inclusive than even 1800s America.
Yep.
The council, meanwhile, functioned like a sort of executive branch, setting the assembly's agenda and ensuring the implementation of its laws. But instead of a president, this too was filled by ordinary citizens. 500 of them, randomly selected to serve for 1 year at a time. To do that, they used a device like this, a clariterion, an ancient lottery machine. Names were inscribed on small ceramic pieces, then inserted into the face. Some numbered or colored balls were then dispensed to determine which names were drawn, and all of this was done in public so everyone could see the system wasn't being rigged. This is modeled after archaeological findings of clariteria believed to be used in jury selection. Because, yes, the courts, not unlike our own, randomly selected jurors to preside over cases each day. Except in Athens, it was random citizens only, no judges allowed. You can see some of the DNA of our own government here, in the birthplace of Western civilization, but its most crucial quality, popular power and real participation, has since been largely stripped away. Today, we get to cast a vote every few years, while in the meantime, vast governmental and corporate structures frequently ignore our demands while investing massive amounts of money into tracking every little thing about us. I know this because if I look myself up on the internet, I can see my personal information for sale.
Sponsor. Delete me. They sponsored my video today. And I'm really my video today, by the way, is about, oh my gosh, it's going to make so many of you upset. I make the claim that the Democratic Party is the more conservative of the two major political parties in the United States.
Information off the internet today. Thank you, delete me. Now, back to Athens. Like us, they had a sort of three-branch system, but at every turn, the people, not politicians or professionals or experts, were in charge. So, did it work? Yeah. This democratic system brought many more Athenians into the fold, gave them a reason to care, and expanded the perspective of the political institutions with the life experiences of merchants, sailors, farmers, laborers, and yes, some wealthy aristocrats. With this democracy, for the next 200 years, Athens ascended to greatness. At its height, it was a naval superpower, a commercial empire, and the stomping ground of some of the most innovative thinkers in history. But this system was forgotten because it ruined the city with faction and infighting. At least, that's what you'd think if you read what the American founders had to say about Athens. But that never actually happened. Though Athens...
Oh, snap. I didn't know this stuff here. I mean, this might be getting me questioning a lot of things, because maybe the founders weren't geniuses as much as we like to think they are. I think something to keep in mind with all this information, because a lot of this is brand new to me. He mentioned archaeological findings, and so I wonder how much of this information is based on that versus written records. So,
had its fair share of civil strife over 2 centuries. Democracy repeatedly won out and proved remarkably durable. It only fell to an army led by Philip of Macedon and his son Alexander the Great, who went on to conquer 2 million square miles across Asia. Now, talk about tough luck. So, why then were America's founders so mistaken about Athenian democracy? Well, for 2,000 years after Athens fell, democracy lay dormant, almost forgotten, until something happened.
Yeah. Is he going to mention the Enlightenment or go back further?
In the 1600s, new scientific discoveries and groundbreaking technologies empowered a growing class of wealthy citizens to question the old establishment forces of monarchy and religion. By the late 1700s,
by the way, the only reason why the Enlightenment happened was in the scientific revolution, which coincided, is because the Renaissance happened. And the only reason why the Renaissance happened, by the way, Renaissance, a word that just means rebirth. But the only reason why the Renaissance happened, where they're rediscovering the classic stuff from ancient Greece and ancient Rome, is because of the Black Death. The fact that so many people died and you had so few people in power that had control like they did prior in the Middle Ages. And so you had this power shift where all of a sudden it was a lot easier to become more powerful than prior because so many people had died. When 1 out of every 3 people you know is gone, all of a sudden a lot of opportunities open up for the survivors. And this led to just a dramatic transformation of society overall, because now people are having different opportunities. And yeah, anyway.
Movement reached its peak when colonists in America rose up against the British crown in a fight for national independence. And when they succeeded, it seemed like lottery and democracy had a chance for a comeback millennia in the making. But the American founders rejected it. Instead of lottery and democracy, they chose elections and republicanism. From one perspective, this was understandable. Athens was one city.
Reminder that republicanism means the law is above all else. It's a rule of law. So you can have republics without democracy.
America was spread across 13 states over 1,000 miles. Getting random citizens to and from the capital in the 1700s would have been a nightmare. But the founders went further, condemning democracy as a faction-riddled mess that would destroy any society where it took root. And in part, that's probably because the American Revolution was powered by wealthy farmers, merchants, and lawyers, men of wealth and property. They needed a way to consult the broader population of property-owning white men, that is, while practically limiting competition for real power to a narrow political elite with the...
So this is always how true reforms happen. You have the status quo, people who are already in power. Throughout history, mostly that's meant nepotism. That's meant royalty. That means, like, typically you are born into power. Whereas if you have any kind of shakeup, you have this power vacuum. Basically, you have outsiders that can gain power, and usually it's through wealth. They accumulate wealth first, sometimes through conquest and violence. But yeah, we saw that with the 1600s. You saw a lot more people who their previous lineage, their parents, their grandparents had nothing, no assets, but they were able to accumulate assets. And by doing this, they were able to challenge the existing status quo. So this is what we saw throughout Europe and, of course, in the colonies.
The leisure time to spare politicking in Washington, D.C. The best way to do that? Elections. Now, the founders did also make a number of apparently compelling arguments for the advantages of elections. They argued elections were effective at synthesizing and representing diverse interests. They argued elections delegated power to wise, capable men, filtering and refining coarse public opinion. They argued elections provided a system of accountability that would avert corruption and punish poor leadership. And most importantly, they argued elections would prevent faction and division, which, if left unchecked, would result in civil war and social collapse.
That's where they were wrong, but everything else was right. I think most importantly, elections are the best thing we have to get vibe checks on the population. It's not going to be perfect, and a lot of times you're going to have minority rules still, but it gets bad enough. Yeah, there's dramatic change with elections, which I think we're getting ready to see over the next few years, by the way.
Now, they probably believed those arguments, but in the 250 years since then, American history and modern scientific research have proven them wrong. On all four counts, representation, knowledge, trust, and unity,
I would disagree. I think as far as unifying, obviously, that is wrong. Accountability, yeah, I think at times it's been more accountable. I think you look at the 1970s, it was much more accountable. You look at the 1930s, it was much more accountable. You look at the 1910s, it was more accountable. So certainly not right now. There's corruption is very rampant right now. Intelligence, I actually think that, yeah, like there is wisdom in crowds. Representation, I think actually, I know we don't like to admit this often, but I think here in the United States, a lot of people say, oh, Donald Trump is not my president. But I think he's not necessarily who we wanted, but who we deserved. I think that this is punishment. I really think that a lot of Americans kind of, it's like we have to go through this. It's not all going to be roses and gravy. It's going to be self-inflicted harm, burn it all down. And then that way, hopefully, we truly see the light. That's the way I envision. Like, going through these last 10 years has been so bad. Overall, it hasn't been all bad. And we can't just say that Trump has been bad on every single issue. But I think overall, as we're saying in the last couple of years, yeah, this is a disaster. He's probably the worst president in American history. But we have to go through the worst president in history if we want to become better as a country, you could argue. So I think, I don't know. I think that the founders were mostly still right. But I'm going to hear him out. Let's see what he says.
Ancient Athenian lottery outperformed modern elections. Let's start with representation. The Athenian approach is built on the principle of koinos, meaning common, shared, or ordinary, because this is how Athens treated power. If you wanted to participate in politics, you needed some free time to attend the assembly, though a daily stipend for attendees helped. You had to be willing to throw your name in the Clariterion, and you had to care about your city. Now, this work wasn't easy. It was seriously demanding of people's time, but it was fundamentally accessible to every citizen. Compare that to America. On the one hand, participation is easier. Just show up to vote once every few years and you're done. But on the other hand, to make a real impact, to actually participate, it's incredibly exclusive. Standing for an election means committing to a multi-year project of traveling, glad-handing, self-advertising, and fundraising. One of these is a lot more inviting to normal people, and one of them is a lot more inviting to nutcases. This is called selection bias. Only certain kinds of people want to stand in elections or stand any chance of winning them. The charismatic, the beautiful, the confident, the wealthy, and well-connected. In turn, voters have only a narrow choice, and elections produce a small, homogeneous political elite that looks nothing like the public and frequently cares little about their problems.
Yeah. It's a bit cynical. I think that the vast majority of these people go into politics with good intentions. Not the guy that's on the screen right now, though, obviously.
Elections merely give people a choice of their preferred member of the elite. That's why Aristotle called them oligarchic. By contrast, he defined democracy as a regime in which everyone may have a turn at being in power. And that is what Athenian lottery achieved. By filling their assemblies with whoever showed up and their public offices and juries with citizens selected by lottery, the Athenians acted like statisticians, producing a representative slice of Athenian society with large random samples. By replacing politicians with the people, Athens ensured that politics served the people. It was politics by the people, of the people, for the people, not politics for politicians. And this koinos, this superior representation, it doesn't just apply to ancient lottery. Modern lotteries in Ireland have revealed the exact same pattern, which we'll discuss in just a bit. But maybe you're thinking that electoral selection bias is valuable in its own way. Politics is a hard job and it requires certain skills. But random samples don't just make politics more representative. They actually make politics smarter, and I can prove it. This is so.
I would argue that a lot of times the politicians are kind of just win people. I used this expression yesterday when I was on the Hills Rising show. I wrote a song about this too recently. Win people are people that just wait to see which direction the wind's blowing, then they go ahead and hop in and follow the wind. I think there's very few people that are truly leaders. I think a lot of us are looking around to see where everyone's going first before we make our own moves. So, we've had many presidents in American history who were win people. And that's okay. I mean, a lot of times politicians are the last to the party. They kind of didn't get the message early enough sometimes, which is a problem, but they eventually can't avoid getting the message. So, but yeah, I hear his points so far. He's making pretty valid points.
False. The wisdom of lottery. In the early 2000s, Scott Page, a researcher at Caltech, found something unexpected. He observed that when faced with a task given certain conditions, a randomly selected collection of problem solvers outperforms a collection of the best individual problem solvers.
Wow.
In other words, a random group is usually better at problem solving than a group of experts. Well, that's a big claim, and
I mean, I have an anecdote to back this up. Yeah, when I served on a jury, I felt like all of us came to a conclusion in such a powerful way. All of us were critically thinking. All of us were, I think, working together in a way that was productive. So I don't think it's really that crazy of a claim to make.
His investigation and research are nuanced and complicated. Moreover, there's a lot of modern cognitive science research that backs this conclusion up. These books and this video by Vsauce are great if you want to learn more, but the simple explanation is this. More talented problem solvers tend to think in similar ways. Frequently, they've received similar educations at similar elite colleges and lead similar lives. As a result, they're vulnerable to similar blind spots, and they tend to fall prey to groupthink biases.
Yeah.
Does that sound familiar? On the other hand, groups with diverse cognitive styles, people who think about things in different ways, tend to be more effective because they see things their peers miss and tend to be more comprehensive in their exploration of solutions. In short, cognitive diversity trumps ability. Therefore, politics should seek to replicate cognitive diversity in deliberative decision-making.
I mean, this is why it matters who the president picks as his advising team, who's on his cabinet. And we've had plenty of presidents who had great cabinets. I was actually going to make a video about this and I shoved it to the back burner again. But I think a lot of times when we're looking at who has governed a country the best overall, it's better to look at their entire advising team. So I was going to do like a ranking of the best cabinets in American history. Obviously George Washington had a pretty good cabinet. James Monroe did. I think Franklin Roosevelt did. It's kind of iffy with the Cold War years, but the bottom line is, look at who's advising. That's why it's terrifying right now with Trump, because you got Stephen Miller in his ear every day. That's horrifying.
And elections don't achieve that. Elections don't produce koinos. They don't replicate the cognitive diversity of the public because they select for a very particular type of individual, about whom voters only get rare opportunities to simply thumb up or thumb down. That's not deliberation. The Athenian council, assembly, and juries couldn't be more different. These institutions operated like a city in microcosm, with a share of large landowners and brash wealthy businessmen, yes, but also artisans and day laborers, sailors and subsistence farmers, all of them with their own knowledge, expertise, experience.
He makes a good point. Often in government, you have two groups. You have entrepreneurs, those who grew businesses or their own business, and you have lawyers, people with law experience. That tends to make up the vast majority of folks in government. It's kind of sad.
Perspectives and their own distinct approaches to problem solving. And here, citizens got into the nitty-gritty details of politics, crafted policies through hours of conversation and argument, and spent a lifetime learning to deliberate and govern. By achieving koinos, or representation through random sampling, Athens also achieved sophos, superior political intelligence through cognitive diversity. And this virtue isn't just limited to ancient Athens. Just a few years ago, as we'll see shortly, a lottery-selected body in France solved a major problem that had stumped politicians for years. Except there's just one problem. This diversity trumps ability theorem assumes everyone is actually working toward the same goal. But what if some of these random citizens are just selfish or badly motivated? At least with elections, there's some public scrutiny. We know who holds office, and we can choose not to elect them again if they become corrupt. But remember, elections actually prioritize selfish and ambitious people. And as for elections preventing corruption, well, how's that working out? No, here too, lottery has the advantage, and it's called euthana, the examination. Before taking office, every person selected by lottery in Athens was subjected to an intensive public audit assessing not his competence, but his character and integrity. If enough citizens came forward to complain about someone, he'd actually be passed over. But if he passed...
Yeah, I was going to bring this point up, so I'm glad he's addressing it. Also, your comment, Caesar, you should be angry. It's healthy to be angry right now, okay? Don't sit there and take it. And if you're feeling helpless, like you're shouting at the wind, there are plenty of groups in your community that feel the exact same way you do. And there are meetups every single day, probably within driving distance of where you live. So it's been really therapeutic for Shannon and I to go to some of these campaign events, I'll tell you that.
After his single-year term, he was then examined again, compelled to report on his time in office and show how he used public funds during his term. Failure of an audit like this resulted in a severe fine or worse, and at the head of every euthana were again ordinary citizens. In Athens, accountability wasn't institutionalized, it was socialized, every citizen checking each other. In America, by contrast, a Byzantine system of ethics watchdogs, inspectors general, and congressional oversight committees, far removed from public scrutiny, sit contentedly alongside campaign finance, lobbying, corporate revolving doors, congressional stock trading, and life-serving career politicians who keep doing corrupt shit until the day they drop dead. All of which, if ordinary people had a say, would be outlawed and punished tomorrow. So, koinos, sophos, euthana. The American founders said elections were the key to representative government, to intelligent and capable government, and to accountable government. But on each count, they were wrong to discount the ancient wisdom of the old Athenian lottery. Yet there was one last issue they thought more important than any of these. Faction, also known as division or polarization. In one of the most cited...
I don't think he's necessarily praising these men. He's just saying that they had some good ideas. I think same thing about the founding fathers. Obviously they were all racist for the most part. Many of them had slaves, but I do think that these ideas are there's a little bit of rose-tinted glasses because we're looking at these ideas through the lens of modern government, especially with all the blatant corruption you see right now with the American government. And you don't see this in every country. You certainly don't see it in many European countries like you see it in the United States right now. Like, corruption is always present, but more people are held accountable. I mean, what better example than how we're handling the Epstein files? There are people in other countries that are being arrested. No one's been arrested in the United States. No one's even been investigated. So, but yeah, I think that's part of that all aside, like this is just really thought-provoking stuff. And the more I hear about it, the more I'm like, yeah, okay, let's go for it. Let's at least try it in a state or at the local level somewhere.
Defenses of the American Constitution, James Madison called faction, quote, the mortal disease under which popular governments have everywhere perished, for which democracy can admit of no cure. Elections, on the other hand, he called the cure. Now, the US is still standing, so elections haven't been a complete failure on this front, but we did fight a horrible civil war less than 100 years after Madison's essay. Today, America is deeply polarized. Enter the fourth and most crucial virtue of lottery, henates, unity. Imagine that you've just been selected for the Athenian Council. Now, Athens was tiny by modern standards, maybe 30,000 adult male citizens, but even so, no one person could have possibly known everyone else. A year-long appointment to an intensely demanding job with total strangers may sound like a recipe for disaster, but think of the bonds...
Especially leaving your other work. I mean, it's hard just to leave our jobs and then come back in a year. Obviously, if it's protected by the government, then it's fine, but Sir Butts, yes, I think alongside elections, definitely. We already see that with jury selection.
That it would build. Then add to that occasional attendance of the assembly and service on juries alongside thousands more fellow citizens. Then multiply all of that year over year for a lifetime. Think of the civic pride and spirit. Compare that to American elections, where politicians are sorted into political teams before they even take office. Madison was dead wrong. Elections force us into faction, to join opposing teams, to cheer for each other's defeat.
I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them.
It's not just elections, though. It's how we elect our leaders. We have plurality voting, winner takes all. So when you have that, you have two choices. You have lesser of the two evils and strategic voting, voting against. If we had a different system that was not plurality voting, such as star voting, score voting, approval voting, even ranked choice voting, if you also had things like proportional representation, I just feel like these would not be as big of issues. There would still be the issues. That's never going away. You can't get rid of tribalism completely, but I feel like a lot of this stuff is just because of the type of voting we have. Winner takes all plurality voting.
Lottery
First
and
past the
public
post.
assemblies force us to work together. But it's not just a thought experiment. For nearly 250 years, despite repeated coups by oligarchs and foreign invasions, time after time, the Athenians restored the democratic system. And this henates, this unity, still shines through today in modern experiments with lottery. So let's take a look at those stories and learn how Ireland and France took the ancient wisdom of koinos, sophos, euthana, and henates and applied them to our modern world. First, let's look at Ireland. Between 2013 and 2014, 100 Irish citizens, 2/3 ordinary people and 1/3 politicians, were randomly selected to form a constitutional convention to tackle a handful of issues that were gridlocking the country's parliament. And when it started, henates was nowhere to be found.
At first, I thought I'll punch him through the window.
That's Finbar O'Brien, describing his first encounter with one of his fellow convention participants, an openly gay man named Chris Lyons. One look at him, and Finbar was filled with hate. You see, one of the issues the convention had to resolve was the question of gay marriage, a contentious topic in this deeply Catholic country. Yet Finbar didn't attack Chris, and he didn't leave. Over 10 weekends, he joined the group deliberations, frequently voicing his opposition. That is, until toward the end, when he stood up to share something he hadn't told anyone. When he was a child, Finbar explained, he'd been sexually abused by an older man. For decades, he'd hated gay men. But over the course of the convention, he'd realized that the people he thought were his enemies were rather a lot like him. He'd changed his mind. In the end, the convention, including Finbar, recommended that same-sex marriage be legalized in Ireland. Not only did this convention prove the incredible power of henates, of unity in democratic lottery, this decision proved its koinos and its sophos. Where politicians had been gridlocked for years, the convention broke through and represented the public will. Put to a referendum, the convention's recommendation was approved by 62% of voters. Since then, Ireland has continued to form new conventions by lottery. These filled 100% with ordinary citizens, and they've continued to succeed where politicians fail, tackling tough issues that are hard to solve with electoral horse races. The next convention, discussing abortion, recommended reforms that passed in a referendum with a historic high 66% of the vote. But Ireland isn't alone. France has also begun experimenting with lottery. In early 2019, when massive protests against a proposed carbon tax plunged the country into chaos, President Macron spent 3 months touring the country to hear people's concerns. And at the end, nothing happened. Macron, citing experts, insisted that the carbon tax was simply the only way. So the protests continued. And when some academics approached Macron with the idea of a lottery, he was desperate enough to sign off. Then, when the 150 randomly selected citizens convened in Paris to form the Citizens' Convention on Climate Change, Macron promised them that their recommendations would be applied to law or referendum, quote, without filter. But some participants were unsure of the whole thing.
I'm embarrassed that I didn't know about this, by the way. This is fascinating. And this happened, 7 years ago?
I thought it was a scam.
That's Jules, one of the 150. When he arrived, Jules was a skeptic of climate change and of the whole lottery business. On day one, he refused to check his luggage at the door of the convention, swearing he was just about to leave at any minute. But Jules stayed, and though he never changed his mind on climate change, he found a sense of belonging, a sort of civic family in the convention.
There are a lot of members who love me very much, and whom I love very much. There is a communion of souls. You feel it.
This is, yet again, lottery proving its power of henates, of unity. But the convention proved more than that. It proved lottery's sophos, its power of collective wisdom, and its euthana, its accountability. Repeatedly, in the face of enormous protests, political elites backed up by experts swore up and down that a carbon tax was the only way. But in the end, the Citizens' Convention produced 149 proposals to address climate change, not one of them using a carbon tax. And afterward, French politicians doubled down on their duplicity by refusing to apply the convention's recommendations to law or to a referendum like they promised. Now, eventually, public outrage compelled French politicians to pass some of the convention's proposals, producing the most ambitious climate legislation in French history. Unfortunately, this does mean the convention has been less successful than one would have hoped, though not because lottery failed, but because politicians obstructed the people's accomplishments.
Wow.
Randomly selected ordinary citizens.
That's crazy. So if we just let it, if the politicians stayed out of it, it would have functioned better.
Aren't just more representative than politicians. They aren't just more intelligent than politicians. They aren't just more accountable than politicians. Ordinary citizens care more than politicians. About each other, about their communities, and about doing the right thing. So how can we apply lottery today? How can we conjure the forces of Koinos, Sophos, Euthana, and Hanates to improve our politics? Unfortunately, France shows just how limited the impact of reform can be if applied in half measures. Athenian lottery worked because it defined the shape of the citizen's life. We, on the other hand, have forgotten how to be political animals. For lottery democracy to work, the average American must expect at least once, if not more than once, to be called to serve at some level of government at some point in their life. That would mean lotteries, assemblies, councils at every level, from the national all the way down to the local. That is ambitious. And in truth, lottery probably can't solve all our problems.
Of course not.
No one reform ever can. Nor do we really know exactly what would happen if we went full bore on it tomorrow. So even if we can't, or maybe shouldn't, replace all our elections with Powerballs tomorrow, we do know a few things. We know that elections have real oligarchic tendencies we need to take seriously if we're going to restore any public faith in popular government. We know that the founders were wrong to write lottery off completely because we know that it has some real virtues. And we know that in countries that have tried it recently, this ancient method has proven just as effective as it was 2,500 years ago. If you want to learn more about lottery, read this book by Yale political scientist Hélène Landemore, published just this February.
I'll check it out. So yeah, we already have a lottery in terms of if we ever get a draft, like during the Vietnam War, there was a lottery for men being drafted into that war. I mean, so theoretically, we've already, it's not a big mystery how this could work. I think it could be fair. I think it could be transparent. Perhaps if we did try something like this, maybe one state or even one city trying to do something like this as a laboratory to see if it works. Similar to what we're doing with universal basic income around the world right now. By the way, everywhere where universal basic income has been tried, it has been amazing. Yeah, I like it. I even would be open to the idea of just having a constitutional convention where we hash out the most divisive issues currently in the United States, and who's made up of that assembly at the Constitutional Convention? Yeah, ordinary citizens drawn up by lottery. I love that. It's just got to make sure they're really random. You got a diverse group in there. Because if it's really random, you don't have to worry about DEI. I think I saw Sir Butts mention something about DEI again. Anyway, so yeah, fascinating stuff. I think we should all keep an open mind when it comes to a random lottery government. I don't know, Slow Snail, the runner-up being the VP. I don't think that would, because the VP doesn't have much powers, unless we gave them more power, then yeah. But because they don't really have much power, they only have two powers. They can break ties and they can certify electoral votes. I don't know. Give them more powers, and then maybe so. Well, thank you so much, Charms. I appreciate that. Okay, so I am wrapping things up here, but I just wanted to thank you all for tuning in. In case you're new here, I saw some new folks because I'm also simulcasting on Facebook. I do this every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Central. I react to a social studies video, typically a history video, typically American political history, sometimes economics or geography. And I always take your suggestions for videos you want me to react to. So please let me know on social media or send me an email if you have something I should react to, in your opinion. And today's video that I'm releasing, because it is a Friday, I typically release on Fridays my long form videos, or at least every other week these days. I am releasing a video, yes, about, I'm making the claim that the Democratic Party in many ways is more conservative than the Republican Party. You heard that correctly. I believe that in many ways, not always, not all ways, but in many ways, the Democratic Party is more conservative than the Republican Party in the year of our Lord 2026. Anyway, at least it's been that way in recent years. I make arguments to back up that claim, but I know I already triggered some of you, surprised you. So you're not going to like it. In fact, whatever the opposite of audience capture is what I'm doing today, because I'm just going to make a lot of my own audience mad. Hopefully I won't lose subscribers over it. But have I heard about scientists disappearing? Yeah, the NASA scientists are just being mysteriously killed. There's all kinds of conspiracy theories floating around on TikTok about this. I only know about that because of Mrs. B informing me, but yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I use the definition, the conservative, the classical conservative definition by the OG conservative himself, Edmund Burke. That's the definition I use. And if Edmund Burke was around today, I do think he would think the Democratic Party was more conservative than the Republican Party. Overall, again, there are notable exceptions, especially when it comes to social issues. Oh, that's a wild claim to say Tucker has a better claim to leftism. Well, when it comes to Israel, I would say that you're making a point there that. Anyway, okay. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you next time.